Hello everybody, welcome to my channel.
Henry Fonda. A defining figure of American cinema, Henry Fonda stands as one of the most influential and admired actors in the history of American film and theater. Known for his quiet intensity, moral gravitas, and understated emotional power, Fonda built a career that spanned more than 5 decades and left an enduring legacy across generations of performers. Early life and beginnings. Henry J. Fonda was born on May 16, 1905, in Grand Island, Nebraska. Raised in a middle-class family and later moving to Omaha, Fonda developed an early fascination with storytelling and human nature, though he initially had no plans to pursue acting. His path shifted when a family friend suggested he try theater, leading him to join the Omaha Community Playhouse, where his natural talent quickly became evident. Seeking broader opportunities, Fonda moved east and joined the University Players, a stage company in Massachusetts. This period connected him with lifelong friends and future stars, including James Stewart. The stage soon became his training ground, shaping the disciplined, thoughtful performer the world would come to admire. Rise in Hollywood. Fonda made his film debut in 1935 and rapidly established himself as a compelling presence. His breakthrough came with Young Mr. Lincoln, 1939, directed by John Ford, where Fonda's calm dignity and inner strength defined his interpretation of the iconic figure. That same year, he starred in Drums Along the Mohawk and shortly after delivered one of his most celebrated performances in The Grapes of Wrath, 1940. His portrayal of Tom Joad, a man battling poverty and injustice during the Great Depression, became one of the most powerful roles in American film history. Through the 1940s and 1950s, Fonda proved his versatility. He appeared in westerns, dramas, war films, and even comedies, yet always infused his characters with authenticity and conscience. Many of his roles reflected the everyman's struggle for fairness, earning him a reputation as the cinematic embodiment of integrity. Stage success and later film work. In addition to film, Fonda enjoyed remarkable success on stage. His performance in Mr. Roberts became legendary, combining humor, authority, and vulnerability. After serving in the U.S. Navy during World War II, he returned to acting with renewed depth and maturity. One of his most enduring works came in 1957 with 12 Angry Men, a courtroom drama in which Fonda played Juror Number 8, the lone voice of reason determined to uphold justice. The film has since become a timeless study of ethics, prejudice, and civic responsibility. Throughout the 1960s and 1970s, Fonda continued to explore diverse roles, including a striking departure from his usual characters in Sergio Leone's Once Upon a Time in the West, 1968, where he played a chilling, cold-blooded villain, an unforgettable contrast to his typical heroic persona. Final years and legacy. Henry Fonda's career culminated with On Golden Pond, 1981, a deeply emotional drama in which he starred alongside Katharine Hepburn and his daughter Jane Fonda. His moving performance of an aging, reflective father earned him his first competitive Academy Award for Best Actor at age 76. Fonda passed away on August 12, 1982. Leaving behind a body of work that shaped the foundation of American storytelling. He influenced generations of performers, including his children Jane and Peter Fonda, who carved their own paths in cinema. Impact on American culture. Henry Fonda's legacy is defined not just by his iconic roles, but by the values he consistently represented: courage, decency, humanity, and introspection. Whether playing a humble farmer, a frustrated juror, or a reluctant hero, Fonda brought realism and moral clarity to the screen. His characters often reflected the conscience of a nation, making him one of the most respected actors of the 20th century. Henry Fonda, a cinematic icon of American integrity and humanity. Henry Fonda remains one of the most revered actors in the history of American cinema, a performer whose quiet strength, emotional depth, and moral clarity defined an era of storytelling. Over the course of more than 50 years, Fonda built a career distinguished not by dramatic flair, but by subtlety, honesty, and an unwavering dedication to character. Early life and formative influences. Born Henry J. Fonda on May 16, 1905, in Grand Island, Nebraska. He grew up in a typical Midwestern environment that emphasized hard work, humility, and community responsibility. It was an upbringing that would later resonate in many of his characters, ordinary men facing extraordinary moral challenges. Fonda's first experience with acting was almost accidental. At the urging of a family friend, he auditioned for the Omaha Community Playhouse. That single choice opened doors he had never imagined. His natural ability, combined with a thoughtful, introspective nature, made him stand out on stage from the start. Joining the University Players in Massachusetts connected him with future giants of American acting, including James Stewart, with whom he formed a lifelong friendship. The troupe also introduced him to Margaret Sullivan, whom he briefly married. These early theater experiences shaped his disciplined approach to performance. Breakthrough in Hollywood. Fonda's move to Hollywood in the mid-1930s marked the beginning of a remarkable film career. Gifted with a lean, expressive face and a commanding yet gentle demeanor, he quickly became a favorite for roles that required sincerity and moral authority. His landmark collaborations with director John Ford elevated him to stardom. In Young Mr. Lincoln, 1939, Fonda portrayed Abraham Lincoln with a soft-spoken dignity that captured the future president's humanity rather than his mythology. That same year, he starred in Drums Along the Mohawk, further solidifying his reputation as a leading man. But it was his performance as Tom Joad in The Grapes of Wrath, 1940, that became the defining early moment of his career. The film's depiction of poverty and social injustice, combined with Fonda's moving portrayal of perseverance and empathy, turned him into a symbol of the everyman hero. A signature style. Fonda's acting style differed from the more theatrical approaches common in early Hollywood. He specialized in minimalism and restraint, instead of grand gestures. He communicated emotion through small, precise expressions. Moral gravitas. Many of his roles involved characters facing ethical dilemmas or standing up against injustice. Quiet authority. He could command a scene with silence, creating tension without raising his voice. Human vulnerability. Even his strongest characters displayed emotional fragility, making them deeply relatable. This blend of strength and sensitivity made him a towering figure in American storytelling. Stage achievements and war service. During World War II, Fonda enlisted in the United States Navy, serving honorably in the Pacific. His wartime experience added deeper emotional layers to his post-war performances. After returning, he achieved major success on Broadway with Mr. Roberts, a play that allowed him to blend humor, authority, and introspection. It became one of his signature stage roles, and he reprised it in the 1955 film adaptation. Expanding his range. Although often cast as idealists or moral leaders, Fonda demonstrated remarkable versatility. 12 Angry Men, 1957, perhaps his most iconic role, Fonda portrayed Juror Number 8, the lone man willing to question a rushed verdict in a murder trial. His calm persistence and belief in justice made the film an enduring classic. Once Upon a Time in the West, 1968, in a striking departure from his typical roles, Fonda played the ruthless villain Frank, a cold, calculating killer. Director Sergio Leone cast him specifically because Fonda's wholesome image would shock audiences. It worked. The performance remains one of the greatest villain portrayals in cinematic history. Later works and final triumph in the 1970s and 1980s, Fonda continued acting in film and television, though with reduced frequency. His final major film, On Golden Pond, 1981, reunited him with Katharine Hepburn and featured his daughter Jane Fonda. His portrayal of an aging, emotionally distant father confronting mortality earned him the Academy Award for Best Actor, an honor that crowned a lifetime of exceptional work. Personal life: Fonda married 5 times and had 3 children, Jane, Peter, and Francis. Both Jane and Peter followed him into acting, becoming significant figures in American cinema. Despite his iconic public image, Fonda was known to be reserved and introspective in private life. His children often spoke of his emotional distance, though their relationships evolved over time. Legacy. Henry Fonda's influence on film extends far beyond his individual performances. He helped redefine American masculinity on screen, not as loud or aggressive, but as thoughtful, principled, and compassionate. Many of his roles embodied the moral conscience of the nation. His acting inspired generations, including his children, Jane and Peter Fonda, performers such as Daniel Day-Lewis, Gregory Peck, and Tom Hanks, filmmakers who sought authenticity and emotional truth in storytelling today. His work continues to be celebrated in film schools, retrospectives, and critical studies. Conclusion: Henry Fonda's life and career illustrate the power of subtlety, integrity, and humanism in acting. He brought depth to every role he played, portraying not just characters, but the complexities of the human spirit. His legacy remains deeply intertwined with the evolution of American cinema, ensuring his influence endures for generations to come. Henry Fonda, the reluctant hero who redefined the American screen. Henry Fonda's name has become synonymous with the quiet, principled American hero, a figure whose strength comes not from force, but from conviction. Yet few actors were as reluctant about stardom as Fonda. Behind his calm exterior was a man shaped by insecurity, shyness, discipline, and a deep devotion to his craft. His career is not only a record of great performances, but also a window into the evolution of Hollywood itself. The artistic philosophy of Henry Fonda. Fonda approached acting with a seriousness bordering on ritual. He believed in truthful emotion, unembellished realism, the elimination of theatrical excess. He once said he wanted audiences to forget they were watching an actor. His goal was to disappear into the character, something he achieved with astonishing regularity. Unlike many of his contemporaries, Fonda disliked flamboyance. He avoided scenes that required melodramatic outbursts unless absolutely necessary. Instead, he preferred low, controlled voice work, precise body language, expressive stillness, strong moral presence. This understated style became his signature, influencing generations of American actors who adopted a more naturalistic, internal method. Collaborations with legendary directors throughout his career. Henry Fonda worked with some of the greatest filmmakers in cinema history. Each collaboration helped shape a different phase of his artistic identity. With John Ford, director John Ford and Henry Fonda formed one of Hollywood's most significant partnerships. Together they created masterpieces that explored American identity. Key works include Young Mr. Lincoln, 1939, Drums Along the Mohawk, 1939, The Grapes of Wrath, 1940, My Darling Clementine, 1946. Ford admired Fonda's honesty and believed he represented the ideal American. Fonda, In turn, respected Ford's ability to build mythic worlds grounded in ordinary human experience. With Sidney Lumet's 12 Angry Men became the ultimate showcase for Fonda's quiet power. Playing the determined juror number 8, Fonda used near-whispered lines, intense eye contact, and thoughtful pauses to build tension. He didn't dominate the room, he transformed it. With Sergio Leone, Fonda shocked audiences with his villainous role in Once Upon a Time in the West. Leone insisted on casting him against type to maximize the emotional impact. When Fonda appeared on screen with icy blue eyes and a cold-blooded stare, audiences were stunned, proof that even in his 60s, he could reinvent himself. Henry Fonda on stage. The actor's true home. Though he achieved global fame in film, theater remained Fonda's spiritual home. He loved the discipline, structure, and completeness of live performance. Broadway gave him some of his richest experiences, including Mr. Roberts. The male animal point of no return. His stage work demanded emotional stamina and sharpened his ability to project vulnerability with subtlety. Even after becoming a movie star, he often returned to theater to reset himself artistically. The war years, a turning point during World War II, Fonda enlisted in the U.S. Navy, serving aboard the destroyer USS Satterley and later as a quartermaster. He was present during the Normandy landings, manning operations on a ship near Omaha Beach. Fonda rarely spoke about the war, but those who knew him believed it profoundly shaped the emotional depth of his later performances. His post-war roles often carried a deeper sadness, sharper introspection, weariness beneath the surface. This was especially evident in 12 Angry Men, Fail Safe, and On Golden Pond. A complex personal life. Despite his public image as the embodiment of American decency, Fonda's private life was far more complicated. He was a disciplined, serious man who sometimes struggled with communication and emotional openness. His children, Jane, Peter, and Francis, later described him as loving but distant, supportive yet private. A perfectionist at home as well as on set, his 5 marriages reflected his difficulty maintaining intimate relationships. Yet many who knew him personally spoke of his dry wit, surprising playfulness, and deep sense of loyalty. The later years, a career reborn in the 1970s, Fonda appeared less frequently in film, but his presence remained powerful. He took on reflective roles that mirrored the passage of time and the complexities of aging. On Golden Pond, 1981, his final major performance as Norman Thayer, a stern but vulnerable father, drew from the emotional truths of his own life. Acting alongside Katharine Hepburn and his daughter Jane Fonda created layers of authenticity rarely seen on screen. The Academy Award he received for the role was widely celebrated as a long overdue honor. Influence on film and culture. Henry Fonda reshaped the idea of the American protagonist. Before him, heroes were often loud, brash, and larger than life. Fonda made it acceptable, even powerful, for heroes to be quiet, thoughtful, morally conflicted, deeply human. His performances became templates for later actors like Gregory Peck, Tom Hanks, Clint Eastwood, who admired Fonda's minimalist acting. Daniel Day-Lewis. Fonda's influence also stretched beyond film. Characters embodying fairness, justice, and courage in adversity often carry echoes of his performance style. Why Henry Fonda endures. Henry Fonda is more than a film legend, he is a cultural symbol. His characters spoke to ideals Americans wished to see in themselves: fairness, compassion, resilience, honesty, even when he played flawed or darker characters. He revealed the complexities beneath human behavior with unmatched sincerity. Today, his films continue to be studied for their artistry and moral depth. His legacy lives on not just in the work he created, but in the values his performances continue to represent. Henry Fonda, the man behind the legend, depth, contradictions, and untold stories. Henry Fonda's career is celebrated for its elegance and restraint, yet behind the camera he was a far more complex and layered individual than the stoic heroes he portrayed. His journey through Hollywood reflects not only a mastery of the craft, but also the evolution of American society, cinema, and even masculinity. Behind the scenes. How Fonda worked on set. Henry Fonda was known in the industry for his meticulous preparation near obsessive desire for authenticity, quiet but commanding presence. He was not the type to socialize loudly between takes. Instead, he often isolated himself, studying lines, adjusting small gestures, or rehearsing the internal logic of a scene. Directors observed that Fonda's performances were like slow-burning fires, gathering intensity until the camera rolled. He disliked improvisation. Unlike actors who thrived on spontaneous creativity, Fonda preferred structure. He believed improvisation could distort character truth. Every movement, every pause, every facial shift had a purpose. He avoided watching his own films. Fonda famously disliked viewing his performances. He feared it would make him self-conscious and interfere with his sincerity on screen. He often doubted himself despite his status. Fonda privately worried that he wasn't good enough. Co-stars like Katharine Hepburn and James Stewart spoke of his humility, sometimes to a fault. That vulnerability became one of his strengths as a performer, revealing shades of humanity even in his most confident characters. Anecdotes and stories that shaped his mythology. 1. The Lincoln Walk incident. For young Mr. Lincoln, Fonda became obsessed with getting Lincoln's walk right. He watched newsreels of Lincoln impersonators, but none felt right. Eventually, he settled on a gentle, thoughtful stride, slightly forward-leaning, as if carrying the weight of a nation. That walk became iconic. 2. John Ford's tough love. Director John Ford was notoriously harsh on actors, but he was especially demanding with Fonda. During My Darling Clementine, Ford often berated him publicly, only to praise him privately. Their relationship was built on mutual respect and stubborn pride. 3. Sergio Leone's shocking introduction. Before filming Once Upon a Time in the West, Leone instructed Fonda to wear brown contact lenses to hide his famous blue eyes. Fonda refused. When the villain Frank removes his sunglasses and reveals those piercing blue eyes, Leone knew audiences would gasp. It became one of cinema's most iconic villain entrances. 4. On Golden Pond's real emotional layers. During filming with Jane Fonda, real-life tensions blended with the script's father-daughter conflicts. In one emotional scene, Jane touches Henry's arm, something she had struggled to do in life. The moment was so sincere that the director left it unchanged, making it one of the film's most moving images. Fonda and the themes of American identity. Henry Fonda did more than act, he helped define American storytelling. His roles often reflected the moral crossroads of his time. The Great Depression. The Grapes of Wrath captured the despair and resilience of struggling families. Post-war disillusionment. 12 Angry Men examined justice, prejudice, and civic duty in a rapidly changing America. 1960s skepticism. Once Upon a Time in the West subverted the idea of the noble frontier hero, revealing a darker side of America's mythology. Late-life reflection. On Golden Pond explored aging, regret, and reconciliation as baby boomers confronted the aging of their own parents. Few actors played such a wide spectrum of symbolic American roles with such emotional authenticity. His quiet influence on method acting. Though not a method actor himself, Fonda's emphasis on truth and internal motivation influenced The rise of naturalistic acting, post-war performance realism, subtler emotional expression in Hollywood. Actors like James Stewart, Montgomery Clift, Marlon Brando, Gregory Peck, and later Tom Hanks all drew from the Fonda tradition. Sincerity over spectacle. Fonda's relationship with his children. Henry Fonda's children, Jane and Peter, admired him deeply, yet they described him as emotionally distant. This complexity influenced their own careers. Jane inherited his discipline and political conscience. Peter inherited his sensitivity and introspective depth. Fonda felt uncomfortable with emotional vulnerability, particularly with family. This absence became a defining theme in both Jane and Peter's autobiographies, highlighting the paradox of a man who could express the deepest emotions on screen yet struggled to express them at home. A symbol of ethical masculinity in many ways, Henry Fonda redefined what it meant to be a man on screen. He presented masculinity as calm, reflective, principled, self-questioning, gentle but unwavering. His characters often triumphed not by overpowering others, but by convincing them, by appealing to conscience and reason. At a time when Hollywood celebrated ruggedness and bravado, Fonda championed emotional intelligence and moral integrity. A legacy preserved through generations. Henry Fonda's impact continues to resonate through film and acting. His performances are required viewing in film schools and acting conservatories. 12 Angry Men alone remains a cornerstone of character study and ethical storytelling. American culture. Fonda's heroes became archetypes for teachers, judges, fathers, public servants, and ordinary citizens who stand up for what's right. Family lineage. The Fondas, Henry, Jane, and Peter, form one of Hollywood's most influential dynasties, shaping American cinema across 3 generations. The enduring power of Henry Fonda. Why does Henry Fonda still matter today? Because in a world often dominated by noise and spectacle, Fonda's legacy reminds us of the power of subtlety, character, empathy, justice, emotional honesty. He showed that the strongest voice in the room can be the quiet one, the voice that thinks, listens, and speaks only when it matters. Henry Fonda was not just an actor. He was, and remains, a moral compass for cinema. Henry Fonda, a life of principles, paradoxes, and unshakable presence. Henry Fonda did not build his legacy on glamour or flamboyant charisma. He built it on integrity, both real and perceived. Yet that very integrity was often a mask for private turmoil, emotional reserve, and lifelong insecurity. The contrast between the man and his screen image remains one of the most fascinating aspects of his life. Below is a deeper examination of Fonda's psychology, his relationships, his acting approach, and the Hollywood landscape he helped shape. The inner world of Henry Fonda. Fonda carried a quiet loneliness throughout his life. Several biographers and friends described him as introspective, self-critical, shy, uncomfortable with emotional intimacy, highly disciplined, moral to an almost rigid degree. These traits manifested in both his work and personal relationships. Where did this emotional distance come from? Many scholars point to his Midwestern upbringing, which valued restraint and stoicism. Others highlight his early career struggles, where vulnerability was discouraged. Still others suggest that the tragedies he witnessed, both personal and global, shaped his emotional caution. Whatever the reason, Fonda lived behind an invisible wall. On screen, it made him compelling. In life, it sometimes made him unreachable. Fonda and the American moral imagination. Few actors captured the American conscience the way Henry Fonda did. His characters weren't flawless, they were thinking men, wrestling with uncertainty. That internal struggle became central to American cinema's development in the mid-20th century. He embodied several archetypes. 1. The moral defender. 12 Angry Men is the definitive example. Here, Fonda represented the belief that one principled individual could challenge injustice. 2. The everyman survivor. In The Grapes of Wrath, he represented ordinary Americans facing poverty, corruption, and systemic collapse. 3. The mythic American hero. In My Darling Clementine, he redefined the Western sheriff as a man of thought, not just action. 4. The dark side of American power. In Once Upon a Time in the West, he explored cruelty, greed, and moral decay, an indictment of the myths he once helped build. No other actor of his era embraced such a wide spectrum of moral identities with such authenticity. A look at his film philosophy. Fonda believed deeply in the responsibility of actors. For him, a role was not entertainment but a chance to reveal truth. He once remarked, "An actor owes his audience honesty. Nothing phony, nothing forced." This philosophy shaped many of his decisions. He rejected scripts he considered morally irresponsible. He chose roles that aligned with his sense of justice. He embraced flawed characters only if their humanity was authentic. He was selective not because he was elitist, but because he viewed film as a social contract. Fonda's impact on directors and co-stars. Directors loved him for his sincerity. John Ford called him the conscience of my movies. Sidney Lumet described him as the purest actor I ever met. Sergio Leone said he chose Fonda because he could convey evil without saying a word. Co-stars admired his discipline. Katharine Hepburn praised his professionalism. James Stewart cherished their lifelong friendship. Younger actors respected his calm authority. Fonda never dominated a room, yet everyone felt his presence. Exploring his most defining roles more deeply. Tom Joad, The Grapes of Wrath, 1940. Fonda's performance captured quiet resolve, moral outrage, compassion, the pain of poverty. His speech at the end, "Wherever there's a fight so hungry people can eat," became one of the most quoted monologues in American film. Juror number 8 to 12. Angry Men, 1957. Here, he embodied civic duty. His character taught audiences that democracy survives only when individuals take responsibility. Frank, Once Upon a Time in the West, 1968. This role shocked fans. It revealed Fonda's ability to subvert expectations. Proving he was neither limited nor typecast, he simply preferred humanity over cruelty. Norman Thayer, on Golden Pond, 1981. His final major role was a deeply personal confrontation with aging, regret, and mortality. It became a cinematic goodbye from a man who had spent his life hiding his feelings. Fonda's place in Hollywood history. Henry Fonda arrived at a turning point in Hollywood's development. He helped bridge silent film era theatricality, right pointing arrow, modern realism, old school heroism, right pointing arrow, morally complex protagonists, Western myth, right pointing arrow, psychological drama, propaganda style patriotism, right pointing arrow, honest wartime narratives. He was a transitional figure, one of the few actors whose career spanned Hollywood's golden age into the new Hollywood era of the 1970s and 1980s. The private battles he never spoke about. 1. Emotional reticence. His difficulty expressing emotion, especially to family, became a lifelong burden. 2. Perfectionism. Fonda held himself to impossible standards. He felt genuine anxiety before nearly every performance. 3. Conflict between public and private identity. The idealistic hero image he portrayed often contrasted sharply with his internal struggles. 4. Loneliness. Despite fame and admiration, Fonda often felt isolated. His closest confidants said he found emotional comfort more easily on stage than in real life. These paradoxes made him not only relatable but profoundly human. Henry Fonda's long shadow. Fonda's influence permeates modern cinema. His legacy can be seen in The reflective masculinity of Tom Hanks, the sincerity of Gregory Peck, the moral ambiguity of Daniel Day-Lewis, the quiet strength of Clint Eastwood, the introspective heroes of contemporary dramas. His approach to character, rooted in authenticity, internal tension, and empathy, reshaped the ideals of film acting. Why Henry Fonda will always matter: because he represented something rare, the courage to be gentle, the strength to be vulnerable, the power of quiet conviction. In every role, Henry Fonda asked audiences to look inward, to question, to feel, to understand. Actors of many eras have chased the complexity and grace he brought to the screen, but few have reached his level of delicate intensity. He remains a guiding star in the constellation of American cinema. Henry Fonda. The depths of a man who quietly shaped America's screen identity. Henry Fonda's presence in American culture is monumental, not because he demanded attention, but because he earned it with discipline, honesty, and an uncommon emotional transparency. His legacy is not merely a collection of performances, it is a philosophical approach to storytelling and a symbolic expression of American moral consciousness. Below is an even deeper exploration of Fonda's world, influence, and contradictions. Fonda's relationship with American mythmaking. Henry Fonda wasn't just an actor in American stories, he became part of the mythology itself. His characters represented the heart of the nation during decades of turmoil. The 1930s to 1940s, the idealist in hard times. The Depression shattered trust in institutions. Fonda's characters offered moral clarity and hope. The Grapes of Wrath became an embodiment of working-class dignity and resilience. The 1950s. Moral responsibility in a changing world. Post-war America faced paranoia, injustice, and rising civil tensions. 12 Angry Men became a cinematic manifesto for critical thinking and civic duty. The 1960s to 1970s. The mythbreaker. Old American myths were collapsing. Vietnam, political corruption, assassinations. In Once Upon a Time in the West, Fonda became the very corruption audiences feared. Fonda didn't just follow American history, his roles examined it, questioned it, and sometimes predicted it. The silence that defined him. Henry Fonda was famous for silence. Not scripted silence, but a natural instinct for withholding. His quietness became his trademark. He could dominate a scene with a breath, communicate heartbreak with a glance, show anxiety with stillness, convey conviction without raising his voice. This silence came from real life. He rarely shared personal feelings. Friends and family said Fonda believed emotional openness was a sign of weakness. He expressed love primarily through actions, not words. He avoided conflict whenever possible. Fonda preferred calm, reason, and internal reflection. Many directors described him as unshakable, even in difficult filming conditions. He kept private grief locked inside. The suicide of his first wife, Margaret Sullivan, deeply affected him, but he discussed it with almost no one. He carried emotional wounds quietly throughout his life. This silence, born of Midwestern upbringing and personal tragedy, became the soul of his acting. Fonda's artistic tension, logic versus emotion. Henry Fonda's performances were crucibles where two forces met: intellectual reasoning, deep emotional undercurrents. He built characters from the inside out, focusing first on thought, then on feeling. This made his portrayals thoughtful, layered, and often haunting. He approached each role like a puzzle. Fonda studied historical documents, mannerisms and details, ideological context, physical posture. He believed every character had an emotional blueprint that the actor must uncover quietly and carefully. He believed emotion should be earned, not performed. His most emotional moments, such as the quiet heartbreak in On Golden Pond, never felt theatrical. They felt like real life, raw and unspoken. This intellectual emotional balance became a template for modern cinematic acting. Henry Fonda and his political courage. Though personally private, Fonda possessed strong political convictions. He spoke out against authoritarianism, censorship, racism, corruption, the exploitation of the working class. He supported civil rights, free speech, and social justice. In the 1940s and 1950s, these views were risky, especially during the Red Scare. The FBI watched him closely despite being non-radical and non-extremist. Fonda's outspoken concerns about civil liberties attracted government scrutiny. He never backed down. He refused roles he considered politically manipulative. If a film pushed propaganda he disagreed with, he walked away, even if it meant losing money or studio backing. His activism influenced his children. Jane Fonda became one of the most politically visible actresses in American history. While their political approaches differed, the moral backbone came from Henry Fonda and Hollywood's changing power structure. Henry Fonda lived through seismic shifts in the industry. The studio system, 1930s to 1950s, he resented studio control. He disliked signing long-term contracts. He felt studios often misused actors. The rise of independent productions, 1950s to 1960s, he embraced independence early, forming his own production company to ensure he could choose meaningful projects. The New Hollywood Revolution, 1967 onward, young directors admired him enormously. They saw him as an example of authentic storytelling long before it became the norm. Fonda adapted to Hollywood's transformation not by changing himself but by remaining timeless. The weight of expectations. Henry Fonda's characters carried significant moral weight. Audiences expected him to speak truth, stand for justice, embody decency. This expectation became both a blessing and a burden. It elevated his career. Directors relied on him for roles that required emotional honesty and moral authority. It also limited him. Fonda felt typecast as a good man, despite his range. His villainous role in Once Upon a Time in the West freed him from that image, proving he could embody darkness with chilling realism. Generational memory. What Fonda means to different eras. To Depression-era Americans, he was a symbol of hope and fairness. To post-war families, he represented quiet responsibility and civic duty. To 1960s youth, he became a bridge between tradition and rebellion. To modern viewers, he stands as the blueprint for emotionally intelligent acting. Fonda's work transcends time because it speaks to human nature, not trends. The final paradox. The man who gave everything on screen but held back in life. Henry Fonda's lasting paradox is this: he revealed more of his soul on screen than he ever did in his personal life. His characters expressed vulnerability, grief, fear, tenderness, righteous anger, yet Fonda himself rarely expressed these emotions openly. Acting became his emotional outlet, a controlled environment where he could safely explore feelings he hid from those closest to him. This paradox makes Fonda not only a compelling actor, but a profoundly human one. The emotional architecture of Henry Fonda's characters. One of the most remarkable aspects of Henry Fonda's acting was his ability to reveal profound emotional truths without dramatic displays. He constructed performances the way an architect builds a structure, carefully, precisely, and with attention to every supporting detail. 1. Stillness as power. Fonda understood that emotional intensity does not always require movement. In many scenes, he stood nearly motionless, allowing the smallest changes in his expression to convey enormous shifts in feeling. This was particularly evident in 12 Angry Men, where he used silence and steady gaze to break down hostility, the grapes of wrath. Where his pauses felt as meaningful as his dialogue, his technique taught future generations that cinematic emotion is often found in restraint. 2. Using his physicality, tall, lean, and long-limbed, Fonda's presence on screen communicated authenticity. He often portrayed ordinary men, farmers, soldiers, cowboys, and his posture, gait, and gestures were always grounded in realism. 3. An actor who believed in the everyman. Unlike the romantic leads of early Hollywood, Fonda didn't position himself as a glamorous figure. He believed dignity could be found in simplicity. That philosophy shaped characters like Tom Joad, Wyatt Earp, Juror Number 8, Norman Thayer. Through these roles, Fonda elevated the lives of regular people into symbols of universal humanity. Professional discipline and on-set behavior. Henry Fonda had a reputation for
Bye bye. Thanks for watching. Bye.